Alright everyone, it's an important day and I strongly support this. The US is withdrawing from Syria saying, look, ISIS has been fundamentally destroyed. That's half true, by the way, from Trump. He declares victory over ISIS. We're getting out of Syria. This is what I wanted him to do from day one. I consider this a good thing. It is very, very funny to see all of the people proclaiming themselves liberals arguing for more foreign intervention and pretending that having a few thousand US troops sitting in the desert over there in a hostile area where Assad, who is not our ally and doesn't like us, is right next door. It's hilarious to hear them actually attempting to justify saying that that's a good idea. I think it's a terrible idea. We shouldn't have been in Syria to begin with. Obama should never have been arming the FSA. He was giving weapons to groups that are essentially terrorists anyway. The only thing is, well, there are terrorists. They're not terrorists, they're freedom fighters because we happen to align with them loosely. Let's give them billions of dollars and all sorts of aid. And remember, at first, Obama justified it when he was arming and funding the FSA, saying, well, it's just non-lethal stuff. We're getting them some training, we got some, safe spaces for them to heal their wounds. We're getting them medical aid and stuff. Then we find out, like, years later, they're giving them anti-tank rockets and crazy shit like that. And it's like, meanwhile, Obama was saying, oh, well, Americans don't need a 30-round magazine for their gun. You don't need semi-automatic weapons. You can't be trusted with these things, but I'm going to give, like, literally everything under the sun. I'm going to give a bunch of Stinger missiles to, the FSA that we haven't even properly vetted. And you'll remember, there were even people on the left at the time being like, isn't this a little bit like a Bush policy? Oh yeah, it's not an overt war, it's just a covert war. Don't worry, Obama loved drones too, like in Yemen and places, and the Senate recently decided to, at the moment symbolically, but it will be going through further after the new incarnation of Congress takes its seats. Isn't that in January, I believe, January 20th. We are going to be losing support for the Yemen crisis over there with Saudi Arabia, partially prefaced on the murder of Khashoggi, but that's just sort of an excuse. We never should have been arming that either. I think we should remove ourselves from all foreign theaters where we're not in a reasonably safe situation or a situation where we're actually desperately needed. We're not desperately needed in Syria. The goal of being there was to crush ISIS. Assad now controls about 3/4 of Syria. The Kurds control the rest. I don't care what Assad does with the Kurds. They're not there. It doesn't matter if we're brothers in arms. We're fighting on the same side. Okay, against ISIS. ISIS has been weakened to almost nothingness in Syria. ISIS' main operation now is in places like Libya or in places like Yemen that are being destabilized in part by U.S. foreign policy and the foreign policy of our allies. People are saying, well, Putin has won. I don't care. I just don't give a fuck at this point. We shouldn't be in the Middle East. Haven't you learned your lesson from Iraq? Haven't you learned your lesson from the attempted overthrow of Egypt, with the Muslim Brotherhood there and all of the problems that it caused? The so-called Arab Spring that thankfully now has basically come and gone? No, Assad is not a nice person. He's an authoritarian figure. He's a dictator-light sort of figure. Yeah, he's done crazy shit. ISIS is worse. So I don't care. Our main goal was to get rid of a bunch of ISIS terrorists. Where's ISIS? When's the last time they conducted major attacks there? The FSA and the Kurds are more likely to do that. And if Assad is using barrel bombs and crazy stuff like that, well, yeah, if you have a bunch of civilians being used as human shields by the people you're fighting, sometimes there'll be collateral damage. It's sad but true. The problem is we were funding and arming his enemies for so long that it ground down the ability of the Syrian military to actually function properly for a while. I would also ask these people, what the hell do you expect us to do anyway? Do you think we should put more troops there and fight Russia directly or shoot at the Iranians? So, in other words, you sound like a bunch of far-righters, honestly. The people that are saying this mostly are on the left. I mean, they're the ones that don't like Trump. Right now, Trump's getting it from both sides. The left doesn't like it because of this, and people are saying, well, where's the wall? You've got the wall GoFundMe. I'll be talking about that. And this is one thing, though, that I completely support. Yeah, why are we in Syria anyway? It's not an allied country. Fuck it. Who cares if we're in Syria? We've got bases all over the Middle East. You realize how much money it costs to upkeep all this stuff? So the liberals are like, well, we need to shrink the military budget. The discretionary spending is too high. Okay, but you can't actually find any situation around the world in which you're willing to close a base. because then Putin wins, or you know, Jinping wins, or Kim Jong-un wins, or whatever. What the fuck do you expect to do? It's just like with this new Cold War. You've got the Democrats trying to shut down any form of negotiation or friendly diplomacy with Russia, while at the same time trying to use the budget to hamstring Trump to keep him from modernizing our nuclear arsenal. I think that's suicidal. I think that it is criminally insane what people on the left are suggesting we do with regards to foreign policy. And the American people fundamentally voted to kick that policy out anyway when we kicked the Democrats out and elected Trump. People wanted a stronger foreign policy, but that doesn't mean adventurism. It doesn't mean, hey, the U.S. government has a problem with a person who leads a nation or a group within a nation. Let's go bomb things. Or other people are fighting and we kind of get along with them. We have no choice but to stay there forever. In this failed Kurdistan. Why is it the U.S. doesn't recognize Kurdistan then? You afraid of pissing Erdogan off is the problem. So you'd rather just make it Assad's problem. The problem being, we can't stay there forever. You realize how much it costs to field even a few thousand men in a place like Syria where, you know, you have enemies on one side, enemies on the other. Here's this one group here that's kind of friendly, but we have diplomatic squabbles with all the time, namely Turkey. And then Iraq kind of gets along with us, but, you know, at times not really. It's a clusterfuck. Why are we still in the Middle East at all? Look, Israel's basically a gigantic military depot for the U.S. military anyway. Why do you think that so much money is given to Netanyahu? It's a gigantic airstrip. It's a gigantic staging ground in case we need to invade anything over there. It's fundamentally the only reason. It's sort of like why China maintains North Korea. Like, hey, it's militarily, from a strategic standpoint, we want this buffer state between us and these East Asian powers like South Korea and Japan, where the U.S. might use to attack us. So we'll keep this little minor nuclear state right on the border. Now it's no longer a minor nuclear state. Now China realizes the problem with doing these things. We realized that back in the 1980s. No, I don't want to fight Assad. I don't give a fuck about what Assad does. That's his problem and his people's problem. Maybe if things go back to being somewhat stable, you still have an authoritarian, dysfunctional regime. Look, people weren't fleeing by the millions before the Syrian civil war. If Assad is so terrible, why is it that they all seem to have no problem with the regime? Dude, most of these people are culturally religious. Assad, compared to a lot of Middle Eastern dictators, had some semblance of religious tolerance in mind. Doesn't really care. Yeah, you're Jew. I don't care. Yeah, we've got Christian minority, Yazidi and stuff. They weren't getting persecuted under Assad unless they raised trouble. The thing is, people generally speaking will leave if instead of, you know, potentially getting shot or thrown in a gulag, they tend to leave their country and be a foreign dissident, like live in exile or something. This happens in China all the time. And of course, none of these people have any problem with all the other butcherous regimes in the world. No, it's just Syria, and that then only because the Russians are operating there. Oh my God, Putin won. Assad, evil child nerve gassing Assad won. No, he wins in the sense that his country returns to stability. The real winners are the Syrian people. Because Assad's forces, you know, for better or for worse, are the ones largely defending the population there. The FSA is like, hey, we want to overthrow the government. The U.S. thinks it's a great idea until ISIS comes along, then realizes it was totally bungled. Yeah, we should get out of Syria, and I strongly support this. And fuck people like Lindsey Graham. Ooh, it's a big mistake. He's going to regret this. No, yeah, I hope you regret getting into Syria in the first place. But you're a war hawk, so probably not. That's all. Peace out.